Bon Care Home and Wellness is a curated collection of vegan and cruelty-free home goods and wellness products. It's like a one-stop shop for those of us looking for cute stuff without the animal cruelty. Their name is French for kind heart, after all. And now you can get an additional 15% off your first order when you sign up for deals this week at boncarehomewellness.myshopify.com. That's BONCOEUR homewellness.myshopify.com. And you can type LOVE15 for 15% off. Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about the Portland Bureau of Transportation proposing an increase in enforcement for parking and expired vehicle registrations, a long-standing hip-hop showcase pointing to a venue owner's political affiliations for severing ties, and Portland Public Schools gearing up for $30 million in budget cuts that will ultimately lead to less social and emotional supports for students. Joining me on this week's Friday News Roundup to dig into all of this are Willamette Week's Potlander column author Brianna Wheeler and our very own executive producer, John Notarianni. It's Friday, February 16th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Welcome, everyone, to the Friday News Roundup. Brianna, John, lovely to have you both here.
Hey.
Lovely to be here.
If you're new to the show, today is a day we break down some of the biggest local stories of the week with some of the best and brightest journalists in town. But before we jump into the news, as most of you know, I like to ask all of our guests an opening question to get us started. And this opening question was specifically crafted to get John to share a very harrowing incident that just happened to him, partially because it's harrowing, but mostly because it proves me right. So February is the final stretch of winter, and it also tends to be the month a lot of us Portlanders decide to take a trip for warmer and sunnier weather. So it made me wonder if either of you had any travel fail stories that you would like to share. It could be Portland related or not. John, why don't you go ahead, please? Take the mic.
Well, it's funny that you bring up this topic, Claudia, because I, in fact, do have a story. So I'm actually recording from San Diego. I'm down here for a couple days and flew out on Tuesday night on an Alaska Airlines flight out of PDX. About 10 minutes into the flight, the pilot got on the mic and said, well, as you probably noticed, we had not noticed, we just hit a flock of birds. And we need to go back to PDX. And he was like very casually reassuring. He's like, don't worry, the plane's still fine, but we hit a flock of birds and feel like we should go back to the airport.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So I will give Alaska Airlines a huge amount of credit. They managed to get another plane and get it ready and get us back in the air within like 90 minutes. It was actually a very impressive sort of logistical jump. Shout out to Alaska Airlines. So sorry to everybody on that flight who was trying to make it to Orlando that night. I don't think they made it. But yeah, that was my exciting midweek travel adventure. Flock of birds. Sorry to them as well. Out of all of us, that flock of birds clearly had the worst time.
They deserve that apology. John, of course, I'm like, dang, when you texted me that, I was like, oh no, that's awful. But then I was just like, remember the Boeing? Were you here for that, Brianna? I don't know who was here.
Oh.
But I had
yes.
a Boeing breakdown about how awful Boeing was. And not only that, adjacently, how Alaska has been slipping. And John, he not only poo-pooed, he minimized a lot of my concerns with, like, I'm from Detroit. I'm ready to die whenever, baby. And then this happened.
So I was talking with my mom about this the other night. And she's like, yeah, you remember that one time I was visiting Portland and we flew out of Minneapolis and birds cracked the windshield and the plane had to return to Minneapolis. So,
oh my gosh.
So this is like, I guess, a running theme in my family is running into flocks of birds in commercial flights in and out of Portland.
Oh my God.
So top that, you guys.
Well, I'm glad you're safe because isn't that why like Captain Sully had to do an emergency landing onto the Hudson River was a flock of birds?
Yeah, well, I've read a lot about this. That was unusual. I've spent a lot of time reading about collisions of birds and planes in the last 48 hours. That was a deeply unusual one because they very rarely hit both engines simultaneously. So that's why that was special. That's not what happened to us. There was no miracle on the Columbia this week. I made it back. I made it back into PDX safely. I ate a lot of gummy bears, and now I'm in San Diego.
Yay! That's all that matters.
Wow.
What about you, Brianna? Can you top that?
One time I was at PDX waiting for a flight, and then the plane arrived and it was covered in dead birds.
Wait, really?
Wait, are you serious?
No?
Oh my God, we're so gullible. John and I were like, no, because we were just talking about that.
What else can I say? There's no topping that.
You guys have the rest of the podcast from here, right? I'm
You're
out.
right, John. You win. That's all. That's the only question. That's all. That's it.
Great job.
All right. Before we move on to the news, I just want to do a shout out. Like, if you have any good ideas for opening questions, longtime listeners, you know the vibe. Please send them over to portland@citycast.fm. It would really help me out. I used to have a bud who would help me come up with them, but he's been super busy running one of the most popular restaurants in St. John's as of late.
Humble brag.
Okay.
So I need your help. Thank you.
Shout out the restaurant.
Pacificio de Oro, what's up? All right.
Hey.
On to the news of the week. Brianna, what's your story?
Okay. It's my vibe. It's my theme to come on here and talk about Portland Public Schools. So we got the news Wednesday evening. The PPS budget cuts have arrived. And word from the district officials is that $30 million is being cut from next year's budget. So this is kind of like the first repercussion of the 3-week teacher strike that happened in November. And that ended with, a cost of living adjustment for teachers over the next couple of years. It was less than what they asked for. I think they got something like 14% and asked for close to 25%. Anywho, the superintendent, Guadalupe Guerrero, he sent us all a letter, all of the parents, and he was kind of outlining the district's plans on how to spend the reserve funds, still leave 5% of that minimum savings that the school board requires. And we're hoping to negate the impact to students. He said $15 million of the cuts are going to come from the central office budget, and then 6% from the overall administrative budget. Mm-hmm. And then $15 million would be spread out over 86 different schools. It's like 2% of building budget. So already the teachers did not get the raises that they wanted. And also part of this email from Guadalupe Guerrero was him anticipating that schools are going to see the teacher-to-student ratios increase, which was another point of contention during the strike. So I dug into Julia Silverman's piece. She reported this for the Oregonian. So she talked to a bunch of teachers, and she talked to them like secret. They all requested anonymity. And the overall tone there is that in these early stages of cutbacks, it's all social and emotional supports that are being cut, school counselors, behavior specialists, then the teachers who lead art and music is all kind of in the same sphere, even physical education, enrichment classes. So part of these budget cuts, one of the reasons that will get laid out is because of low enrollment, because students are bouncing, they're getting less money from the government. And meanwhile, cutting all of the vital supports that we need to keep these kids in schools. So for parents like me who have kids in special education, it's, you think you're going to get a little something, and then they take it away. And then they give you a little bit of something, and they take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading this and was just sort of flashing back to, Claudia, the conversation we had a week or two ago about the fire department, and they're looking at budget cuts. And one of the things that's being floated there is cutting Portland street response. And Renee Gonzalez, who oversees that bureau, what he sort of said in explanation was something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing here, that there just isn't a lot of fat to cut. That there isn't a lot of things beyond core services. And the point is, in both of these circumstances, when you look at what programs feel quote unquote extraneous, it turns out to be the ones that help the most vulnerable people. The programs
Absolutely.
that support the people who need the most help. Like those are the
Yes.
first things to go, like whether it is Portland Street Response or like assisting special needs children. And it's just, ugh.
That's such a good point. Something that Superintendent Guerrero added on top of like, hey, we're going to probably see more, teacher to student ratios, is that he said, with few exceptions, the district will preserve students' access to visual and performing art classes, physical education, and libraries. But I'm just like, what are those few exceptions? Where are those schools?
Exactly.
And I mean, really what we're getting here is, hey, a lot of I guess like annoyance and pain is coming. We don't know quite what it is, but it's coming. That's what I'm hearing. Because there's like a meeting that's coming up tonight. We're taping this on Thursday morning, but at 5:30 p.m. there will be a PPS Community Budget Review Committee meeting. But John, you were just like, nothing's going to happen. And I want to know why. Like what,
Totally.
Well, okay, like my read is that, the community advisory board is just that. It's like a chance for the community to weigh in and sort of tell them how they think changes in policies are going to affect the community. I think it's pretty clear that cutting a $30 million out of the budget for the Portland public school system is going to be bad for the community,
Yeah.
I mean, there's just no way they're going to say anything other than like, this sucks and this is atrocious.
How are you feeling about this, Brianna? I mean, you actually have skin in the game.
If I bounce from Portland, if you see me move out of Woodlawn, it's going to be because of this. This is going to be the primary reason. It's that serious. Like, it's gnarly. Because I'll have the most impassioned conversations with like my child's core team and the frustrations that we have because of superintendents, because of administration, the amount of red tape that we have to go through to get the most basic things done, things that are constitutional rights for me and my family. I mean, it's wild. And a lot of like this placating, like, well, come to the information session. Come let your thoughts be heard. Well, I can be angry at home. That's cool. Like, I don't need to travel to be angry with other people in groups. That's not my vibe.
And I'm sure that there's a lot of other parents who feel just like you, who have sort of seen these problems with the Portland public school system and gone through this COVID era and then this like strike that just felt so disruptive and that are just like, screw it. Like there's other school districts.
Absolutely.
And as more parents pull their students out of PPS, like we know the budget is tied to enrollment. So as enrollment goes down, there's less money. I don't know.
It's an unsolvable problem, it seems like. It's a snake eating its own tail. Add this to the fact that it is becoming just unlivable in the city anyway. Can't afford to live here anyway. And also my kid can't go to school. And also crime, drugs. It's just, God damn it. Jeez, give us a break. Get off our necks.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like the only point I'll make on top of that is like, when the strike was going on and wrapping up, there's a lot of talk about funding at a state level, and to my read, that's essentially where this is going to need to be fixed, right? Like, you can debate and like there's lots of valid criticisms of the Portland Public School Board and its leadership, but at the end of the day, they only have so much money to work with. And like without the state funding at a higher level, there's gonna need to be some hard choices somewhere.
Yeah. Rachel Saslow wrote an interesting piece for the Weekly, and it was right before the strikes. And it was talking about the fundraisers that happen in the more affluent communities and how much money they raise and how that stays in those schools. So that's the future that we're looking at, I think. And then, schools in neighborhoods like mine, which isn't even, I mean, I live in a perfectly lovely neighborhood. It's not like most neighborhoods in Portland. But to think that like a neighborhood a mile and a half to my east, millions of dollars. My neighborhood, we can't get special education teachers.
Has anyone let Commissioner Carmen Rubio know about this?
Carmen Rubio and her bucket of magic money.
Do you think maybe her Clear Energy Fund could somehow bring hope to us all?
Let's write a letter.
It's a joke, but it's also like, maybe, actually, maybe.
Dear Magic Money.
Maybe.
Please come here to school. Well, Brianna, thank you so much for bringing us this story. I know that it affects you personally and greatly. I I can't even imagine how frustrating it is, because I also remember in reading it that Guerrero hinted, like, because of the November contract, now we have to do these. And I was like, boy.
The shade. I'm saying it's like this all the time. Oh my God. Petty. Everybody's so fucking petty.
Okay, that's all. I just want, before we move on, I just wanted to point that out, because we were. Thank you. Yeah, of course. We were all taking the high road, and I was like, no. Let's dive down a little bit. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's take a quick break here, and when we come back, more headlines of the week. So, John, what do you have for us this week?
I've got a little bit of neighborhood gossip based in some reporting from Andrew Jankowski at Willamette Week, kind of supplemented by just stuff that I've been reading on social media, people giving little bits and pieces. And I'm talking about what I would say is Portland's most well-known hip-hop concert series, The Thesis. It's produced by Max Smith and Verbs. They've been doing it since like 2014. It's a big deal. It's like the center of the Portland hip-hop community, I'd say. Well, they've been doing this show. They've been getting like a ton of attention for like Portland's growing hip-hop community. Well, they just announced that they are breaking up with their longtime venue, Kelly's Olympian, downtown. Kelly's has been around for like 120 years. But like right before their February 1st show, they went online and said, we're not doing it at this venue anymore. And I want to quote directly from the social media post that the organizers of The Thesis put out, because there's a lot in here. All right. So quote, while Kelly's Olympian has been a safe place for hip hop music and progressive culture, the recent ownership decision to announce their alignment with far-right candidate Renee Gonzalez on the day of The Thesis' 9-year anniversary, followed by a ban on multiple artists of color, followed by severing the relationship with the venue manager we've worked with since day one, the venue's demand to charge for the show, effectively taking money out of the hands of Thesis artists, it has become clear that our community is no longer welcomed. There's a lot there. What do you guys think?
Woof.
I really like the jab they gave. I mean, I feel like every Portland anything should just automatically just should have a Gonzalez jab.
I mean, increasingly it does.
That's where we're going, You're like, no thanks to Gonzalez. It's just like, ma'am, this is a Burger King. Like,
I love that it's not an Arby's, it's a Burger King.
And it's a Burger King. It's a little classier. I don't know why we're discussing politics at a Burger King. No, but I appreciated that. I just was like, wow, guys,
do you want me to break down this Gonzalez thing a bit, though? Like what the backstory is?
Well, didn't he have like a party there at the Kelly's Olympian?
Yeah. So Gonzalez, he's a city commissioner. He's running for mayor. He did a launch party at Kelly's Olympian. That was the same night that The Thesis was holding an event later that evening. They didn't overlap, but I can imagine that the end of the Gonzalez party and the people coming to set up for The Thesis, not necessarily the same crew of people. But it goes a little bit deeper, and this is sort of where we get into some conjecture. Like, the owner of Kelly's Olympian is this guy, Ben Stutz. And, he's had the building since like 2005. Like, right in that neighborhood, there's been a lot of like gnarly stuff going on recently. Yeah. Like, you remember that big open air fentanyl market that got a ton of attention last year that we talked about on this show? That was right across the street from where Kelly's Olympian is. Yeah. So he's been pretty outspoken about, the problems that downtown is facing. And it makes sense why a candidate like Renee Gonzalez, who is sort of putting himself out there as like more of a law and order, clean up Portland candidate, is really appealing to this guy. There also are public records that showing Stutz and his wife donated to Gonzalez's mayoral campaign back in 2022, which is not an endorsement on behalf of Kelly's Olympian, the bar. But
sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's where a lot of this is coming from.
Yeah. Do you think that these last few years have maybe kind of radicalized that owner? Like the way that his neighborhood has evolved, and now he's like, well, fuck a community.
I think so. I mean, totally. How could they not? Like, I feel like a lot of downtown business owners really are, Gonzalez's message is resonating with them because, I mean, John, do you remember when we spoke to just business owners here in North Portland? Like, they really felt ignored. not
Mhm.
only by, the city, by the police. And here's this candidate that's telling them everything they want to hear.
Yeah.
And it also seems to like back it up, to the chagrin of everyone else on council, like 5 minutes before anything's supposed to happen. Like, he is actually moving his agenda forward.
Mhm.
And so I can see why they would rally behind him.
I mean, here's a quote from Stutz in that Willamette Week article I mentioned. Quote, I would like more police patrols. Just walk the street, go in and deal with people, make it uncomfortable for people to break the law. I'd also like to see the governor get some state police and National Guard out there, right? So he's like, yeah,
Whoa.
we want police to come in and do it, which is just interesting when you think about the collision between this guy who's like, has an investment in a building that's expensive downtown. And that building is like renowned as a safe space for people to like form community. And it seems like these two interests are kind of directly opposed at this moment.
Yeah.
And just to give a bit more context, like historically speaking, the Portland hip hop scene has always been over policed.
Yeah.
Those were
Oh,
the
yeah.
shows that were routinely shut down. Those were the
Yes.
shows that,
Mhm.
so the thesis, I mean, it's right there. If you go to their site, it says the thesis was born out of a history of over policing at Portland hip hop shows, as well as general lack of support of Black music and the Black community. I mean, that was their whole grounding. So I can imagine that, as you were just saying, Brianna, the political shift, the political tide is shifting downtown with certain, more progressive business owners wanting more police presence, wanting more of these things that, again, understandable from their point of view. And I can also see why, the thesis would not want to be there. And
Totally.
luckily, they're a really popular concert series. I mean, they had people like Mike Capes, Il Mac. I mean, the Last Artful Dodger had done sets there. I mean, the Last Artful Dodger is huge now.
Yeah.
When freaking Damian Lillard would show up. It was just a place for everybody. And he wouldn't get harassed. It was just chill. It was like, we're here to enjoy this music. So I'm really happy this isn't the end for the thesis. And I hope they find a better home.
Yeah. And the part that is kind of shady to me on this, like even putting aside all these questions about political leadership, part of the question was, the venue had said that they wanted to start charging these guys to put on this show. They said that they wanted to start charging the thesis to produce the program in their venue, which okay, this group has been not only creating this amazing community in this space, but bringing business into your bar for nearly 10 years. And now you want to charge them money? That's the point where I was like, get out of there. You guys are good enough. The thesis is not ending. You can find any number of other places in town that would be happy to host this. And that's what they're saying. They're gonna come back. They haven't decided where, but they are in talks with other venues that could be the new home of the thesis.
I will say, though, as a person who's played in music in town, that is traditional for a venue to charge you for the front of house, for the door person. They take that out of your earnings. It's a thing. So I'm just saying, the deal they had at Kelly's Olympian is usually not the norm, and it's awesome they had it. It's a great deal. But the owner is somehow saying hey, I'm not making enough in the bar, or times are tough or whatever. That's his right to ask for that. But the thesis gets to go somewhere else, and good luck filling that void,
Yeah.
But I also heard, didn't you, John, you buzzed around in my ear. You're just like, well, there's more to this because now they want to turn it to an EMD den or something.
EDM. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, EDM. I'm like, what are you talking about?
So another wrinkle of this is that the venue manager is leaving as well.
Nailene Silva,
which, full disclosure, Claudia and I used to work with Nailene at OPB. He's a wonderful guy.
Awesome
but he
guy.
had a pretty I wouldn't say that it was as fiery as the thesis's statement, but he made a point on social media being I'm not happy about this either. He says, quote, they want to have more EDM nights and develop their karaoke program. That path is not my path. I wish them well. Right. So there is also a sort of shift in the goals of what they're trying to do with that space away from what it has been for the last 10 years, which even beyond the thesis, I've seen so many good shows at Kelly's Olympian, right? They have been a reliable space for local music and other creative projects to thrive. So, Yeah, I mean, I guess if I had an up-and-coming EDM act, maybe I'd be excited about this. But like, that's the goss.
Right?
That's the gossip in the water right now.
It was already hard for me to wrap my mind around the thesis being at a downtown biker bar, and now EDM is just kind of funny.
Yeah.
Is this owner, like, is he a biker guy? Is he like tatted from his neck to his ankles? Is he just a investor type of suit type of guy?
No, yeah, he moved to Portland in 1987 to practice law and then got into real estate.
My fucking
There we go.
There it is.
We're going to move on. But there was a tweet that was thrown at us, completely random, about, it basically said, I'm ready to give up on your show. John is great, yes, but Claudia is clearly a closet Republican. And I was so offended because John is fine. You know what I mean? Like, he's okay. Like,
I agree with the first half of that tweet, and I have no opinion on the second half.
I was like, John, calm down. He's okay. But I understand the closet Republican because I feel like I'm always like, well, the business owner has some reason. And I think it's like because my mom was a business owner, because so many immigrant people are business owners and they just get stomped on all the time.
That's tea.
Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, money don't play politics. Like, money is not Democratic or Republican.
Yeah. I just wanted to throw that out there, one, because I thought, Brianna, you would enjoy that the most out of all of our contributors.
I enjoyed that.
And for my part, thank you, random commenter.
I agree. I am pretty great. No joke. I read that and I was like, John is great. I was like, I mean, I totally agree with your probably second half. I could see why you would think that. I'm always like, Tom McCall.
The first half is the part you quibble with. You're like, closet Republican, I can hear that, but Sean is great. Who is this?
Should I start a shadow tweet just to be like, he's okay?
Whoever tweeted that to you guys is losing their mind right now.
John, I love you. You know, I'm just joking.
If you have feedback, send us an email. Portland@citycast.fm.
Oh, anyhow. My story this week is how Peabot, who is still facing a $32 million budget deficit, has come up with a new idea on how to fill in some of those zeros. Now, they want to hire 28 new parking officers to help rack up parking ticket fees from us Portlanders. Now, the agency also wants to add a 20-cent credit card fee on all of their parking meters. So if you don't know, Peabot needs money. Like yesterday. It's in a financial hole, and if it doesn't find funds soon, it could lay off something like 118 city employees. So like this isn't this is no joking around zone, you know? Now, if you turned into last Friday's roundup, you might remember that Commissioner Carmen Rubio had committed to throwing some money over from the city's super profitable Magic Clear Energy Fund. But that could not cover the entire budget deficit. So Peabot, who has been facing this deficit for years, is looking internally, which they should. They should look inside themselves. But this is a thing that has been building for years, you guys, because Peabot's primary source of operating revenue comes from the State Highway Trust Fund. People are driving electric, so they need new money, you know? So Peabot's plan is to hire these, parking officers, 28 of them, 6 to patrol for expired vehicle registrations, and the rest for patrolling parking meters.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Follow-up question.
Yes.
Do you guys pay parking meters?
Oh,
yes, of course I do. Oh my God, John, you don't pay parking meters?
I always do.
Okay.
You're the second person who's asked me that and been like incredulous that I do.
I've heard so many people that just like don't pay parking meters in
Wait,
Portland.
you don't get tickets? I
Yes.
feel like I always get tickets.
So at one point, like last year, I was looking for some office space for us, and there was like this really nice, like sort of downtown Pearlish space. And I was like, what's the parking situation? They're like, well, it's only street parking, but like nobody is giving tickets on this block, you know? And I think that there's a lot of parts of the city where there is just sort of this tacit understanding that like parking patrols are very low and that there are a lot of people who just like roll the dice. And
I guess I've been real lucky in that parking ticket department. I always get caught. Like, I've never been able to get away with anything.
I always pay my parking.
I know. Do you think it's because we're from like LA and like they don't fuck around in LA? Oh no,
Friend.
they will.
Friend.
Yeah.
They will tow your shit.
They will. I was about to say they will tow your shit.
They will tow your shit. I actually have a tattoo of a classic parking meter.
You have a parking meter tattoo?
Let me describe. Yes, I have a tattoo of a classic parking meter because I lost a couple of cars to parking in Long Beach, California, because parking was so intense. And I would be like, man, I live here. Why can't I park in front of my house? Why am I paying exorbitant amounts of money to park in front of my house? Well, they showed me. And they towed my car.
I just want to give you a quote. PBOT director Millicent Williams said, "It would be a very important and less than painful pinch point for people than I believe is anticipated or expected. In fact, what we learned is most people don't know how much they pay for parking." And I kind of agree with her there. Like if you're parking downtown, not using public transportation or ride sharing or biking or whatever, pay the man. Pay the man.
Yeah.
But an increase of tickets for expired registration could really affect those who are already struggling. Like most people who don't renew their car registration aren't doing it just to be contrary like John. They just can't afford it.
I renewed my car registration. Thank you very much.
John's like, wait, do you guys renew your car registration? So what all I'm saying is like piling up on them, like piling up on people who can't afford their car registration is like another poor people tax, you know? And I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, and there was this big parking registration amnesty over COVID, right?
Right,
Like there was
yeah.
this big period, but they're like, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. And the idea that that's going to snap back with like really fierce enforcement is really scary. So
Yeah.
I saw the stat, there's about 1 million vehicles registered in Portland. It's estimated that 460,000 of them are eligible for renewal. Like nearly half of the cars, the vehicles in Portland. And this is from the PBOT director. This is from Millicent Williams. Told Coin, 460,000 of them are eligible for renewal.
That's why they're coming for their money.
Yeah.
So PSA, check your car registration. If you haven't done it in a while, open
Yeah.
that glove compartment. Check it out.
Totally.
They're coming for you.
And pay your parking meter. Oh my God, John.
I'm just telling you what I heard. I'm just telling you what I hear on the street, Claudia.
I love it. Oh my God. Hearing that half of cars aren't registered, I'm like, well,
That's
I'm
wild.
sure not
Yeah.
half of them can't afford it. I'm sure like a little bit of what you said, John, like they're just out of the practice. Cause I remember, my girlfriend's car, she left it here when she went for grad school. And so I had it for years. That entire time was not registered because she forgot. And I was driving it around. No one said anything. I wasn't, like when you find out, like I was like, well, I've been driving a car without a registration. I could have died, again from LA. They just shoot you out there if you don't have a registered car.
You're going to meet your maker that day. Yeah.
Oh God. We're scared straight. Yeah. You raised your hand. Yes, John.
Yes, please. The one thing I'll add is like it's interesting looking at these numbers. Like PBOT has a $32 million shortfall. PPS has a $30 million shortfall, which we were just talking about. The numbers are really similar. And like PBOT has the ability to increase revenue themselves in a way that PPS doesn't, And I'm sure like if PPS could tax frickin' I don't know. What can you tax in a school? Tax school lunches. I mean, that sounds like actually a horrible thing to do.
Wow.
I'm like, that sounds like a horrible thing to do as soon as it came out of my life.
I'm sorry. No.
But if PPS could like increase the tax to like fund education, that would, be a very different situation rather than just like having to cut essential services, which
No, valid point. But also at Anthrophage from X, did you just hear that John wanted to tax school lunches? How great is John now? How great.
My first thought was to tax pencils, and I was like, that's a stupid thing. So
And you're like, oh, let's just go for tax lunches.
how much could a school lunch cost, really?
I don't know. What, $20?
Like $60?
Oh, man. All right. Well, guys, thank you for hanging out with me, going through some headlines of the week. John, you are great. And so are you, Brianna.
You are great too, Claudia.
Oh, thanks. Back at you.
Even if you're a closet Republican.
You've been getting that closet with her.
Paul McCall was a wonderful governor. Jesus Christ. I will die on that hill. That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. Our executive producer is John Notarianni. Our producer is Julia Fiaioni. Our newsletter editor is Rachel Monahan. And our host is me, Claudia Meza. Original music by Jenny Conley and Stephen Drizos. Additional music by Epidemic Sound and All the Kimonos. Just a quick note that we will be taking Monday off for the holiday weekend, so you'll see us back in your feed on Tuesday. We hope you have a great weekend. Until then, see you at Slim's.